The day I discovered my husband's affair was also the day I realized how naive I'd been for 15 years of marriage. There was no dramatic confrontation, no lipstick on his collar, just a text message that flashed across his phone while he showered, lighting up the screen with words that shattered the life I thought we shared. I miss being inside you. Tonight, same place? My hands trembled as I placed his phone back exactly where he'd left it. I remember feeling oddly calm, like I was watching someone else's life collapse instead of my own. James emerged from the bathroom, towel wrapped around his waist, water droplets still clinging to his shoulders, completely unaware that I now carried the knowledge that would end us. "Going to be late tonight, Claire," he said casually, not even looking at me as he rummaged through his closet. "Department meeting. Don't wait up." I nodded, my voice steady despite the storm raging inside. "Of course, department meeting." The following weeks were a blur of private investigators, bank statements, and hotel receipts. Her name was Veronica Mitchell, an interior designer James had hired to renovate his university office 6 months earlier. She was 32, 11 years younger than me, with the kind of effortless beauty that made me suddenly conscious of every line around my eyes, every strand of silver threading through my dark hair. 5 months, Claire, my lawyer, Melissa, told me gently. "The affair's been going on for 5 months. We have enough evidence to file for divorce on grounds of adultery." I remember staring at the glossy photographs spread across her desk. James entering a boutique hotel downtown. James and Veronica exiting an hour later, his hand possessively resting on the small of her back. Her smile, confident, satisfied, victorious. What does she have that I don't? The question slipped out, unbidden and pathetic. Melissa's kind eyes met mine. "I've been doing this for 20 years, and I can tell you it's rarely about what the other woman has. It's about what the cheater lacks. Integrity, character, courage." When I confronted James, he didn't deny it. He seemed almost relieved that the charade was over. "I didn't plan for this to happen," he said, repeating that worthless cliché as if it somehow absolved him. "We just connected. She understands me in ways you never could." 15 years, James," I whispered. 15 years I supported you through graduate school, through your dissertation struggles, through those early years of teaching when you were so anxious before every lecture you could barely eat. I was there when no university would hire you, when your first book was rejected by 16 publishers. I believed in you when no one else did. He looked away, unable to meet my eyes. "People change, Claire. We want different things now." "No," I corrected him. "You want someone different. Someone who wasn't there for the struggle. Someone who only knows the successful tenured professor you've become. Someone who benefits from all the years I invested in you." The divorce proceedings were swift, clinical. James was generous with the financial settlement, his guilty conscience manifesting as monetary compensation. I would keep our house in the suburbs while he moved into a sleek downtown apartment that I later learned Veronica had decorated. It was at the final divorce hearing that I saw her in person for the first time. She sat in the back of the courtroom, elegant in a cream-colored pantsuit, her presence a silent declaration of victory. As James and I signed the papers that dismantled our marriage, I glanced back and caught her eye. She didn't look away. Instead, her lips curved into a subtle smirk, her expression unmistakable. "I won. You lost." That smirk haunted me for months afterward, emerging in my dreams and turning them to nightmares. It followed me through the empty rooms of what had been our home, now just mine, stripped of James's books and clothes and presents. It echoed in the sympathetic tones of friends who didn't know what to say beyond platitudes about new beginnings and better days ahead. I was 43, suddenly single, and completely lost. My identity had become so entwined with being James Morrison's wife that I barely remembered who Claire Donovan, I had to remind myself to use my maiden name again, was supposed to be. For 15 years, I'd put my own academic career on hold, taking part-time teaching positions at community colleges so that James could pursue his ambitions at prestigious universities. I had a PhD in literature gathering dust while I graded freshman composition papers and planned my schedule around James's conferences and lectures. "You need to reclaim yourself," my sister Megan insisted during one of her weekly check-in calls. "Apply for those university positions you've always wanted. You're brilliant, Claire. It's your turn now." "Who would hire me?" I asked, staring at my sparse CV. "I've been teaching remedial grammar while my research has stagnated. The academic world moves on quickly. Then update your research. Write that book you've been talking about for years. Stop living in James's shadow. He doesn't deserve to keep taking up space in your life." Maybe it was spite, or desperation, or simply having nothing left to lose. But I followed Megan's advice. I threw myself into my research on feminist perspectives. Submitted my manuscript to a university press. 2 months after that, I received an email that changed everything. "Dear Dr. Donovan, we are pleased to inform you that your manuscript has been accepted for publication by Oxford University Press. Furthermore, the search committee at Westfield University would like to invite you for an interview for our open associate professor position in the Department of English Literature. Westfield University, one of the most prestigious private universities on the East Coast, known for its rigorous academic standards and influential faculty, the kind of institution I'd dreamed of teaching at before I'd decided that James's career was more important than my own." The interview was scheduled for the following week. I spent days preparing, updating my wardrobe, rehearsing answers to potential questions, trying to project confidence I didn't entirely feel. When I walked into the English department's elegant conference room, I was surprised to find myself facing not just the department chair, but a full committee of 6 professors. "Dr. Donovan," began Dr. Eleanor Wright, the formidable department chair whose own groundbreaking work on Victorian literature I had studied during my doctoral program. "Your manuscript impressed us greatly. It's rare to see such fresh perspective on texts that have been analyzed exhaustively." "Thank you," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "I've been developing these ideas for some time." "Indeed," she continued, glancing at my CV. "Though I note there's quite a gap in your publication history." This was the moment I'd been dreading, the acknowledgement of those lost years. But instead of offering excuses, I chose honesty. Yes, there is. I made choices that prioritized my ex-husband's academic career over my own. I don't regret supporting someone I loved, but I do regret losing sight of my own aspirations. That's not a mistake I'll make again. Something shifted in Dr. Wright's expression. A flicker of recognition, perhaps even respect. The rest of the interview flowed more naturally as we discussed my research methodology, teaching philosophy, and potential courses I could offer. 2 days later, I received the call offering me the position. "We'd like you to teach our advanced seminar on contemporary women writers," Dr. Wright explained. "And given your research background, we'd also like you to develop a new course on post-colonial feminist literature for our honors program." I accepted immediately, a surge of joy and vindication washing through me. After years of academic purgatory, I was finally getting the chance I deserved. It wasn't until my first faculty meeting in late August that I discovered James also taught at Westfield. Not in the English department, but in history, specializing in Revolutionary America. We were in entirely different buildings, different academic circles. It was a large enough university that our paths need not cross often, if at all. "Did you know?" I asked Dr. Wright after the meeting. About your ex-husband? Yes. Her eyes were shrewd behind stylish glasses. Does it present a problem? I straightened my shoulders. Not for me. She nodded approvingly. Good. We hired you because you're brilliant, Dr. Donovan. Don't let anyone make you forget that. The fall semester began, and I threw myself into teaching with renewed passion. My seminar quickly became one of the most sought-after courses in the department, with students eager to engage with both classic and emerging female authors. I developed my post-colonial feminist literature course for the spring, looking forward to exploring themes of identity, oppression, and resistance with bright young minds. I occasionally glimpsed James across campus, but we maintained a careful distance. I heard rumors that he and Veronica had moved in together, that they were engaged, that they were planning a destination wedding in the Maldives over winter break. Each rumor stung less than the one before, the pain gradually dulling into something closer to indifference. Then came the day I received my class roster for the spring semester. I was sitting in my new office, still somewhat sparse but distinctly mine, with bookshelves filled with works by the women writers I admired, a desk positioned to catch the morning light, walls adorned with art from female artists around the world. I clicked through the student information system, scanning the names of those who had registered for my post-colonial feminist literature honors seminar. 20 students in total, a perfect number for deep discussions and meaningful engagement. I scrolled through, noting with satisfaction the impressive GPAs and academic backgrounds of these honors students. And then, halfway down the list, a name that made my finger freeze above the mouse. Mitchell, Sophia R. My heart pounded as I clicked on her profile. The system revealed a photograph of a young woman, 18 years old, with familiar high cheekbones and confident eyes. But where Veronica's eyes held calculation, Sophia's reflected intelligence and curiosity. Her academic record was exceptional: 4.0 GPA, perfect SAT scores, glowing recommendations from high school teachers. I scrolled further. Mother, Veronica Mitchell. Father, not listed, not listed. The words echoed in my mind as I sat back in my chair, processing this unexpected twist. Veronica had a daughter, a brilliant daughter. A daughter who was now enrolled in my class. I did the mental math. Sophia was 18, which meant Veronica must have had her when she was very young, perhaps just 14 or 15. A teenage mother who had managed to build a successful career as an interior designer while raising a gifted child. I had to acknowledge that was no small achievement. But the implications of this discovery sent my mind reeling. Did James know about Sophia? Did Sophia know about James and her mother's relationship? And most importantly, did either of them know that I would be Sophia's professor? I found myself searching for Sophia's resemblance to James in her photograph, some hint that would confirm or deny my suspicions about their connection. But her features revealed nothing definitive, just the striking beauty she'd inherited from her mother, tempered by something more thoughtful in her expression. As I stared at the screen, a memory surfaced. That smirk on Veronica's face in the courtroom, the silent declaration of victory. I wondered if she would still be smirking if she knew that her daughter was about to spend a semester under my guidance and evaluation. That I would be shaping the young mind she had raised, influencing her intellectual development, becoming a potential mentor to her only child. The thought should have given me some petty satisfaction, some sense of karmic justice. Instead, I felt an unexpected weight of responsibility. Sophia Mitchell was not responsible for her mother's actions or choices. She was a student, my student, and deserved the same quality of education and mentorship as any other. I closed her profile and sat in silence for a long moment, considering my options. I could request that Sophia be transferred to another section, citing a conflict of interest. I could pretend I hadn't made the connection and treat her exactly like any other student. Or I could acknowledge the strange circumstance we found. ourselves in and navigate it with transparency and professionalism. Before I could decide, a knock on my office door interrupted my thoughts. I called for the visitor to enter, and the door swung open to reveal a young woman with dark hair pulled back in a neat ponytail, wearing jeans and a Westfield University sweatshirt. "Dr. Donovan?" she asked, her voice confident yet respectful. "I'm Sophia Mitchell. I'm registered for your post-colonial feminist literature seminar next semester, and I was hoping to discuss the reading list with you. I want to get started over winter break." And there she was, no longer just a name on a roster or a face in a photograph, but a real person standing in my office, eager and unaware of the complicated history that connected us. "Of course, Sophia," I replied, gesturing to the chair across from my desk. "Please come in." As she sat down, pulling a notebook from her backpack, I made my decision. I would be her professor. Nothing more, nothing less. I would teach her, with the same dedication and rigor I offered all my students. I would not allow the past to color our academic relationship. But as she looked up at me with those intelligent eyes, I couldn't help wondering what Veronica's reaction would be when she discovered who was teaching her daughter. Would that smirk finally fade? And what would happen when our paths inevitably crossed? "I'm particularly interested in Adichie's work," Sophia was saying, her enthusiasm evident. "The way she explores the intersection of gender and national identity really resonates with me." I focused on her words, pushing thoughts of James and Veronica to the back of my mind. "Adichie is brilliant," I agreed. "We'll be spending considerable time on Half of a Yellow Sun and Americana. But I think you might also find Jamaica Kincaid's perspective fascinating." And so began my unexpected connection to Veronica Mitchell's daughter, a twist of fate I could never have anticipated on that devastating day when a text message ended my marriage and changed the course of my life forever. My first official class with Sophia Mitchell was scheduled for a Tuesday morning in January. I spent the previous evening meticulously reviewing my lecture notes, though I'd already revised them a dozen times. Sleep eluded me as questions churned through my mind. Would Sophia somehow recognize me? Had she seen photos of her mother's new partner's ex-wife? The very thought was absurd, yet it nagged at me. When I entered the classroom, I found 15 students already seated, with 5 more trickling in behind me. Sophia sat in the front row, notebook open, pen poised, the quintessential eager student. Her dark hair was pulled back in the same neat ponytail she'd worn to my office, and she wore a burgundy turtleneck that complemented her olive complexion. "Good morning, everyone," I began, setting my materials on the desk. "Welcome to Post-Colonial Feminist Literature. I'm Dr. Donovan." As I launched into my carefully prepared introduction to the course, I noticed Sophia nodding along, completely engaged. When I asked the class to introduce themselves and share what drew them to the course, her answer was thoughtful and articulate. "I'm Sophia Mitchell, freshman, planning to double major in English and political science. I'm interested in how literature can illuminate power dynamics that might otherwise remain invisible, especially for women in societies transformed by colonialism." Her response was so impressive that several other students glanced at her with a mixture of admiration and intimidation. By the end of that first class, I had to acknowledge an uncomfortable truth. Sophia Mitchell was likely the most promising student in the room. Over the next few weeks, my suspicions were confirmed. Her analysis of Tsitsi Dangarembga's nervous conditions revealed insights even I hadn't considered. Her paper on Jean Rhys's Wide Sargasso Sea was graduate-level work. During discussions, she listened carefully to her classmates before offering perspectives that elevated the entire conversation. "Antoinette's madness isn't just a personal tragedy," she argued during one particularly heated debate. "It's the embodiment of colonial violence against both the feminine and the native. Rochester's renaming her Bertha is as much an act of erasure as England's renaming of the Caribbean islands." I found myself looking forward to her contributions, even as I maintained a careful professional distance. I was determined that my complicated feelings about her mother would never affect my treatment of Sophia as a student. One afternoon in late February, I was working in my office when a knock at the door interrupted my concentration. I called for the visitor to enter, and James walked in. 10 months had passed since our divorce was finalized, but seeing him still produced a physical reaction, a tightening in my chest, a momentary inability to breathe. He looked good, damn him. His salt and pepper hair was freshly trimmed, his navy blazer tailored to his broad shoulders. "Claire," he said, hovering awkwardly by the door. "Do you have a moment?" I gestured to the chair across from my desk, my face carefully neutral. "What can I do for you, Professor Morrison?" He winced at the formality but sat down. "I wanted to check in, see how you're settling into Westfield." "Quite well, thank you. My classes are going wonderfully, and I've been invited to present at the Palmer Conference next month." That's great, Claire. I always knew you were meant for this." The statement hung between us, heavy with unspoken accusations. If you always knew, why did you let me set it aside for 15 years? Why did you take and take while I gave and gave? Was there something specific you needed? I asked, glancing pointedly at the stack of papers on my desk. He shifted uncomfortably. "Actually, yes, it's about a student, Sophia Mitchell." My heart sank, but I kept my expression neutral. "What about her? She's in your honors seminar, right?" When I nodded, he continued, "I need to ask a favor. She doesn't know about Veronica and me?" "Excuse me?" "Veronica hasn't told her about our relationship yet. They've had a complicated past and she's waiting for the right time. So if you could just—" He trailed off, gesturing vaguely. "Just what, James?" My voice was ice. "Pretend I don't know that my ex-husband is sleeping with my student's mother? Keep your secrets for you? It's not like that, Claire. Sophia is important to Veronica, and their relationship is fragile. Finding out about us from someone else could damage things irreparably. So Veronica sent you to ask me to keep quiet? That's rich." James shook his head. "She doesn't know I'm here. She doesn't even know you're teaching Sophia's class. If she did..." He trailed off again. "She'd what, James? Storm the university and demand her daughter be placed with another professor? On what grounds?" I leaned forward. "Or are you worried about what I might tell Sophia about her mother?" His face hardened. "Would you really do that? Use an innocent student to settle a score?" The suggestion stung because it revealed how little he truly knew me, even after 15 years of marriage. "No, James. Unlike some people in this scenario, I understand the concept of professional ethics." Relief flooded his features. "Thank you, Claire. I appreciate—" "I wasn't finished," I interrupted. "I won't deliberately tell Sophia about my history with you and her mother, but I won't lie if she asks me directly, and I won't avoid university functions or modify my professional behavior to accommodate your secret. If she discovers the connection, that's between you, Veronica, and her." He nodded slowly. "That's fair." As he stood to leave, curiosity got the better of me. "How long have you known about Sophia?" "Since the beginning," he admitted. "Veronica was upfront about having a daughter when we first met. Yet you never mentioned her during our divorce. It wasn't relevant to our proceedings." I laughed hollowly. "No, I suppose the existence of your girlfriend's child wouldn't affect the division of assets or alimony calculations. Very practical of you." He hesitated at the door. "For what it's worth, Claire, I am sorry for how things ended between us." "Are you sorry for what you did, or just sorry I found out?" He had no answer for that. After he left, I sat motionless, trying to process this new complication. Veronica didn't know I was teaching her daughter. Sophia didn't know her mother was involved with my ex-husband. And now I was carrying this web of secrets every time I walked into my classroom. The following week, Sophia lingered after class. Dr. Donovan, I was hoping to discuss my research paper topic with you. Of course, I replied, gathering my materials. Let's talk in my office. As we walked across campus, she spoke animatedly about her ideas, her hands gesturing with enthusiasm. I'm thinking of focusing on Arundhati Roy's The God of Small Things and examining how she portrays the intersection of caste oppression and gender violence. That's an ambitious topic, I noted as we entered my office building. Roy's work is layered with political and social critique. You'll need to be careful not to oversimplify. I know, she agreed eagerly. That's why I wanted your guidance. No one in my family really understands literature the way you do. My mom tries, but she's more visual. She's an interior designer. The casual mention of Veronica sent a jolt through me, but I maintained my composure as we settled into my office. Different kinds of creativity, I said neutrally. What about your father? Is he interested in literature? The question slipped out before I could consider its implications. Sophia's expression shifted subtly, her enthusiasm dimming. I don't have a father, she said simply. I mean, biologically speaking, I must, but he's never been in the picture. I'm sorry, I said, genuinely contrite. That was insensitive of me. She shrugged. It's fine. It's just been me and my mom for as long as I can remember. She had me when she was really young, 15. Her parents wanted her to give me up for adoption, but she refused. She dropped out of high school, got her GED, worked 3 jobs while taking night classes to get her design certification. Pride filled her voice. She built her business from nothing. She's kind of amazing. This glimpse of Veronica through her daughter's eyes was disconcerting. The woman who had smirked at me across a courtroom, who had slept with my husband without apparent remorse, was also this determined teenage mother who had defied expectations to create a life for herself and her child. She sounds remarkable, I said, surprised to find I meant it. It couldn't have been easy. It wasn't, Sophia confirmed. We struggled a lot when I was little. There were times we could barely make rent. But things are better now. She's got a successful business and… She hesitated. A flash of something, discomfort, confusion, crossing her face. She's been seeing someone new. It's getting serious, I think. My throat tightened. Oh? Yeah, some history professor. She's been pretty vague about him, which is weird because she usually tells me everything. Sophia fidgeted with her pen. Sorry, I don't know why I'm telling you all this. Sometimes it's easier to talk to someone who's removed from the situation, I offered, feeling anything but removed. Maybe. She smiled ruefully. Anyway, about my paper topic. We spent the next 30 minutes discussing her research approach, potential sources, and theoretical frameworks. Throughout the conversation, I maintained my role as her professor, offering guidance and challenging her ideas while silently grappling with the strange intimacy of knowing more about her family situation than she herself did. As she was leaving, Sophia paused at the door. Dr. Donovan, can I ask you something personal? My heart raced. You can ask, though I reserve the right not to answer. She nodded. Fair enough. I've read your book, the one that just came out. In the acknowledgments, you thank your sister for encouraging you to reclaim your voice after years of silence. What did you mean by that? I hadn't expected this question. My acknowledgments had been deliberately vague, a private reference to my post-divorce revival that I hadn't thought readers would scrutinize. Sometimes, I said carefully, we make choices that diminish us, choices we believe are necessary or right at the time. My sister helped me recognize when one such choice had run its course, and she encouraged me to prioritize my own academic voice again. Sophia considered this. That's what my mom always says, that every choice has a cost, and you have to decide if you're willing to pay it. She smiled. I think you and my mom would actually get along. You're both strong women who don't take crap from anyone. The irony of her statement nearly made me laugh aloud. "Life is full of surprising connections," I managed to say. After she left, I sat at my desk, overwhelmed by the complexity of the situation. I had just had a meaningful conversation with my ex-husband's girlfriend's daughter about resilience and choices, all while carrying the knowledge that would upend her understanding of her mother's new relationship. That evening, I received an email notification from the university events calendar. The history department was hosting a lecture series on revolutionary women, and James was scheduled to present next week. Under normal circumstances, I might have attended out of professional courtesy and genuine interest in the topic. Now, I hesitated. Attending meant potentially seeing James and Veronica together in a public, professional setting. It meant risking an awkward encounter, or worse, a confrontation. But avoiding the lecture also meant allowing their presence to dictate my professional choices, exactly what I'd promised myself I wouldn't do. After deliberating for an hour, I clicked attending on the event response. I would go to the lecture, listen respectfully, and leave. I would neither seek out nor avoid James and Veronica. I would conduct myself with the dignity and professionalism that reflected my position at Westfield. What I didn't anticipate was receiving another email 10 minutes later from Sophia Mitchell. "Dr. Donovan, I noticed you're attending Dr. Morrison's lecture on revolutionary women next week. I'm planning to go as well. His focus on women's contributions to the revolution aligns perfectly with themes we've been discussing in class. Would it be okay if I sat with you? I'd love to get your perspective on his historical analysis, especially as it relates to the literary representations we've studied. Best regards, Sophia Mitchell." I stared at the screen, a sense of inevitability settling over me. The careful separation I had maintained between my past with James and my present with Sophia was about to collapse. Because if Sophia sat with me at James's lecture, there was no doubt in my mind that Veronica would be there, too, and she would finally discover exactly who was teaching her daughter. With a deep breath, I typed my response. "Sophia, I'd be happy to discuss Dr. Morrison's historical analysis with you. The intersection of historical and literary perspectives is indeed fascinating. I'll see you at the lecture. Best regards, Dr. Donovan." I hit send and leaned back in my chair, wondering if Veronica would still be smirking when we came face to face next week. One thing was certain. The carefully constructed boundaries between our lives were about to shatter, and I wasn't sure any of us were prepared for the fallout. The evening of James's lecture arrived with an unseasonable chill. I dressed with particular care. A charcoal gray pantsuit that projected professional confidence, pearl earrings that had been a gift from my mother, a silk scarf in deep burgundy for a touch of color. My reflection in the mirror showed a woman composed and self-possessed, revealing nothing of the anxiety churning beneath the surface. The Humanities Building auditorium was already half full when I arrived. I chose a seat midway back, offering a clear view of the podium without being conspicuously prominent. Around me, faculty members and students settled in, programs rustling, voices murmuring in pre-lecture anticipation. "Dr. Donovan." Sophia appeared at the end of my row, waving enthusiastically. She wore a navy blazer over a white blouse, looking older than her 18 years. "I'm so glad I found you." She slid into the seat beside me, pulling out a small notebook. "I've been reading about women's contributions to revolutionary pamphlet literature. Did you know that Mercy Otis Warren published political plays criticizing British policy as early as 1772, using a male pseudonym?" "I did," I replied, smiling despite myself at her enthusiasm. Warren was remarkably ahead of her time. Her history of the Revolution was groundbreaking, though often overshadowed by male historians. "Exactly. I'm hoping Dr. Morrison addresses her work specifically. His syllabus for Revolutionary America mentions her, but only briefly." She glanced toward the stage, where technical staff were adjusting the microphone. Have you attended his lectures before? The question was innocent, but it sent a ripple of tension through me. No, this is my first. Mine too, Sophia said. My mom's been pushing me to come, actually. She's been weirdly insistent about it. Before I could respond, the lights dimmed slightly and Dr. Eleanor Wright approached the podium to introduce the speaker. I scanned the front row, where department chairs and distinguished guests typically sat, and there she was, Veronica Mitchell, her copper hair falling in perfect waves around her shoulders, wearing an elegant emerald dress that made her stand out among the more conservatively dressed academics. She hadn't noticed me yet, her attention focused on the stage where Eleanor was delivering James's introduction. Author of Forgotten Founders, Marginalized Voices of the American Revolution, and recipient of the Bancroft Prize for his work on class dynamics in revolutionary Boston. Please join me in welcoming Dr. James Morrison. Applause filled the auditorium as James took the stage, looking every inch the distinguished professor in his tweed jacket with leather elbow patches, an affectation he'd adopted after receiving tenure, one that had always struck me as slightly pretentious. He adjusted the microphone with practiced ease. Thank you, Dr. Wright, for that generous introduction. Good evening, colleagues and students. Tonight, I want to challenge the conventional narrative of the American Revolution as a primarily masculine endeavor. As James launched into his lecture, I found myself instinctively evaluating his arguments with the critical eye of both an ex-wife and an academic peer. His presentation was polished, his research sound, but I noted several instances where he glossed over nuances that a more thorough analysis would have included. Beside me, Sophia took meticulous notes, occasionally nodding or frowning in response to James's points. Once, she leaned over to whisper, "He's overlooking Abigail Adams's economic contributions entirely," and I had to suppress a smile at her astute observation. Halfway through the lecture, during a particularly animated explanation of female-led boycotts of British goods, I noticed Veronica turning her head, surveying the audience. I tensed as her gaze swept across our section, then froze as our eyes met. Recognition dawned on her face, confusion quickly followed by shock. Her eyes darted from me to Sophia, who was completely absorbed in James's lecture, unaware of the silent exchange happening across the auditorium. Veronica's expression hardened, her lips pressing into a thin line. The smirk I remembered from the courtroom was nowhere to be seen, replaced by something closer to alarm. She turned abruptly back to the stage, her spine rigid, shoulders tense. I drew a steadying breath and refocused on James's lecture, though my mind was racing with possible scenarios for the aftermath that would inevitably follow. And so these Daughters of Liberty, as they called themselves, transformed traditional domestic activities into political acts of resistance, demonstrating that the revolution was fought not just on battlefields, but in homes, markets, and social gatherings across the colonies. Thank you. The audience erupted in applause. James smiled, acknowledging the appreciation with a modest nod before inviting questions. Several hands shot up, and he fielded inquiries about specific historical figures, methodological approaches, and connections to contemporary movements. That was fascinating, Sophia whispered to me, though I think he could have drawn stronger parallels between the economic resistance strategies of revolutionary women and the literature they produced. An excellent point, I agreed. Perhaps you should ask him about that. She hesitated. I don't know. These questions are all from graduate students and faculty. I'm just a freshman. A freshman with insight worth sharing, I encouraged her. The academic community thrives on fresh perspectives. After a moment's deliberation, Sophia raised her hand. James, scanning the audience for the next question, pointed in our direction. Yes, the young woman in the navy blazer. Sophia stood, her voice clear and confident, despite the hundreds of eyes now turned toward her. Dr. Morrison, You discussed women's economic resistance through boycotts and domestic production. But you didn't address how these activities influenced the political literature women were creating during the same period. Do you see meaningful connections between their material resistance and their written advocacy? A flicker of surprise crossed James's face. Whether at the sophistication of the question or at Sophia's presence, I couldn't tell. An excellent question, Ms. Mitchell. Sophia Mitchell. Something shifted in James's expression, a momentary fracture in his professional composure. From the corner of my eye, I saw Veronica half rise from her seat, then sink back down. Ms. Mitchell, James continued, recovering quickly, you've identified an important intersection that deserves more attention. While my research has focused primarily on the material aspects of women's resistance, there's compelling evidence that women who participated in boycotts and spinning bees were often the same women corresponding about political ideas or publishing anonymous essays. He elaborated for another minute, citing specific examples that partially addressed Sophia's question while skillfully avoiding its more challenging implications. As Sophia sat down, looking reasonably satisfied with his response, I noticed Veronica staring at us, her gaze intense and unreadable. The Q&A session continued for another 15 minutes before Eleanor returned to the podium to thank James and invite everyone to a small reception in the adjacent faculty lounge. As the audience began to disperse, Sophia turned to me. Would you mind if we attended the reception? I'd like to ask Dr. Morrison a follow-up question about the connection between Mercy Otis Warren's plays and her brother's political activities. Before I could formulate a diplomatic refusal, Veronica appeared at the end of our row, her expression tightly controlled. Sophia, she said, her voice strained with forced pleasantry. I didn't realize you'd be here tonight. Sophia looked up, surprised. Mom, what are you doing here? Veronica's gaze flickered to me, then back to her daughter. I came to support Dr. Morrison's lecture. We've been working together on some historical preservation projects. Oh. Sophia glanced between us. Mom, this is my professor, Dr. Donovan. She teaches my post-colonial feminist literature seminar, the one I've been telling you about. Dr. Donovan, this is my mother, Veronica Mitchell. The moment of formal introduction was so absurdly civilized, so at odds with the complex history between us, that I almost laughed. Instead, I extended my hand with deliberate politeness. Ms. Mitchell, a pleasure to meet you. Veronica hesitated, fractionally before taking my hand, her grip firm, almost challenging. Dr. Donovan, Sophia has mentioned how much she enjoys your class. The subtext beneath our cordial exchange crackled with tension. Sophia, perceptive as she was, sensed something amiss, her gaze moving curiously between us. You two haven't met before, have you? She asked. No, Veronica said quickly. We haven't had the pleasure until now. It wasn't technically a lie. We had never been formally introduced, despite sharing a courtroom during my divorce proceedings. Still, the deliberate omission hung in the air between us. We were just discussing attending the reception, I said, maintaining the facade of normalcy. Sophia had some excellent questions for Dr. Morrison. I think we should skip the reception, Veronica replied, an edge creeping into her voice. Sophia, you mentioned having an early study group tomorrow and it's getting late. Sophia frowned. It's only 8:30, Mom, and my study group isn't until 10. Nevertheless, I think we should go. Veronica's tone left little room for argument. Confusion and disappointment flashed across Sophia's face. But I wanted to ask Dr. Morrison about another time, perhaps, Veronica interrupted, already gathering her purse. Dr. Donovan, it was interesting to meet you. Likewise, I replied evenly. Sophia, we can discuss your questions during office hours if you'd like. I'd appreciate that, Sophia said, clearly perplexed by her mother's behavior. See you in class, Dr. Donovan. I watched as Veronica practically steered Sophia toward the exit, their heads bent close together in what appeared to be a tense conversation. Just as they reached the door, James approached me, his expression grave. "Claire," he said quietly, "we need to talk." "Do we?" I raised an eyebrow. "I believe I've fulfilled my end of our agreement. I didn't tell Sophia anything about our history. That's not—" He glanced around at the lingering audience members, then lowered his voice. "Not here. Can we speak privately?" Against my better judgment. I followed him to a small conference room adjacent to the auditorium. He closed the door behind us, then ran a hand through his hair, a gesture so familiar it sent an unwelcome pang through me. "That was Sophia? In your class?" "As we've previously established, yes." "And you brought her to my lecture tonight?" I bristled at the accusation. "I didn't bring her anywhere. She emailed me about attending, mentioned she'd be there, and asked if she could sit with me to discuss your historical analysis in relation to our literary studies. It was a perfectly reasonable academic request that I had no grounds to refuse." James paced the small room. "This is a disaster. Veronica is furious." "That's hardly my concern." "It should be," he snapped. "You're teaching her daughter." "Yes, and I'm doing so with complete professionalism. Unlike some people in this situation, I don't allow personal relationships to compromise my ethical standards." The barb hit its mark. He flinched visibly. "Claire, please. This is complicated enough without—" "Without what, James?" "Without acknowledging that you left our 15-year marriage for a woman who now doesn't want me teaching her daughter?" "A daughter who, by the way, is an exceptional student who deserves the best education Westfield can provide, regardless of her mother's personal entanglements." He sighed heavily. "No one is questioning your teaching abilities, but surely you can see how uncomfortable this situation is for everyone involved. Actually, the only people who seem uncomfortable are you and Veronica. Sophia is thriving in my class, completely unaware of the soap opera playing out around her." Before James could respond, the door opened and Eleanor Wright stepped in. "Ah, there you are, James. The reception is—" She stopped, registering the tension in the room. "I'm sorry, am I interrupting?" "Not at all," I said smoothly. "Dr. Morrison and I were just discussing some overlapping themes between revolutionary literature and history. Very illuminating." Eleanor nodded, though her shrewd eyes suggested she wasn't entirely convinced. "Well, several trustees are eager to speak with you, James. And Claire, I wanted to introduce you to Dr. Hernandez from the Global Studies program. She's quite interested in your work on post-colonial feminist narratives." "I'd be delighted," I replied, moving toward the door. To James, I added coolly, "Excellent lecture, Dr. Morrison. Your analysis of gender dynamics in revolutionary contexts was revealing." The reception was mercifully brief. I chatted with Dr. Hernandez, accepted compliments on my recent publication, and made appropriately enthusiastic noises about potential cross-disciplinary collaborations. All the while, I was acutely aware of James across the room, engaged in conversation with trustees while periodically glancing in my direction. Veronica and Sophia were nowhere to be seen, having evidently departed as planned. The knowledge that my careful separation of personal and professional spheres had been shattered left me feeling oddly exposed, as if a protective barrier had been stripped away. When I finally extricated myself from the event and walked to my car in the now dark parking lot, I found a figure leaning against the driver's side door, Veronica Mitchell, arms crossed, waiting. "We need to talk," she said without preamble. I unlocked the car with deliberate calm. "I have nothing to say to you, Ms. Mitchell." "Well, I have plenty to say to you." She stepped closer, her voice low but intense. "What exactly do you think you're doing with my daughter?" "Teaching her. That's my job." "Don't play innocent. Of all the professors at Westfield, she just happens to end up with you? James's ex-wife?" "Sophia registered for my course because she's interested in post-colonial feminist literature, It's an honor seminar with limited enrollment, open only to students with exceptional academic records. She qualified. End of story. Veronica's laugh was brittle. And you expect me to believe this is just a coincidence? That you're not using my daughter to get back at me? At James? The accusation was so offensive that for a moment I couldn't speak. When I found my voice, it was glacial. I don't use my students as pawns in personal vendettas, Ms. Mitchell. Unlike some people, I maintain professional ethics. What's that supposed to mean? It means I don't sleep with other women's husbands, for starters. Her eyes narrowed. So there it is, the real Claire Donovan, finally showing herself. All that academic poise is just a facade, isn't it? Believe what you want, but understand this. Sophia is my student, an excellent student. I will continue to teach her with the same dedication and rigor I offer all my students. If you have a problem with that, take it up with the university administration. I moved to open my car door, but Veronica blocked me. Stay away from her, she said, her voice dropping to a near whisper. Find a reason to transfer her to another section, or I'll make sure she learns exactly who you are and why you're really interested in her. The threat hung in the cold night air between us. I met her gaze steadily. Are you really prepared to tell Sophia that her mother had an affair with a married man? That the man she's been vague about, the history professor, she's been working with on preservation projects, was someone else's husband when their relationship began? Because that's the story you'll have to tell if you want to explain why her professor might have a personal bias. Veronica's composure faltered momentarily. You don't know anything about my relationship with my daughter. Actually, I know more than you think. I know she's proud of how you raised her as a teenage mother. I know she values honesty and integrity. I know she's trying to understand why you've been secretive about your relationship with James. I paused. What I don't know is whether your relationship can survive her discovering how it really began. Veronica stepped back, her expression shifting from anger to something more complex. You've been discussing my personal life with my daughter? No, she's been discussing her life with her professor, a normal part of the mentoring relationship. Unlike you, I've kept clear boundaries. For a long moment, we stood in silence, the weight of everything unspoken pressing down between us. Finally, Veronica spoke, her voice quieter, but no less intense. This isn't over. On that, Ms. Mitchell, we agree completely. I watched her walk away, her heels clicking sharply against the asphalt, before I slid into my car and closed the door, with shaking hands. The confrontation I had been anticipating for weeks had finally occurred, yet instead of closure, it had only opened new wounds, created new complications. As I drove home through the dark, quiet streets, I wondered what tomorrow would bring. Would Veronica make good on her threat to tell Sophia everything? Would James intervene? And most troubling of all, what would happen to Sophia, caught in the middle of a conflict she hadn't created and couldn't control? Sleep eluded me that night. I tossed and turned, replaying the confrontation with Veronica in my mind, imagining various scenarios that might unfold in the morning. By dawn, I had resigned myself to facing whatever came, determined to maintain my professional integrity regardless of the personal chaos swirling around me. I arrived at my office earlier than usual, hoping to center myself before my first class. To my surprise, an email from Dr. Wright awaited me. Claire, my office, 8:30 a.m. Urgent matter to discuss. Eleanor, the brevity and tone suggested this wasn't a casual check-in. I glanced at my watch, 8:15, just enough time to gather my thoughts, before heading to the department chair's office. Eleanor Wright's office reflected her personality, meticulously organized, intellectually rigorous, with a touch of unexpected warmth in the form of hand-knitted afghans draped over her visitor. Chairs. As I entered, I noted she wasn't alone. James sat in one chair, looking uncomfortable. A woman I didn't recognize occupied the other, perhaps in her 60s, with steel gray hair and the unmistakable air of university administration. "Claire, thank you for coming," Eleanor said, gesturing to a third chair that had been brought. This is Dr. Patricia Caldwell, Dean of Faculty Affairs." My stomach tightened. Faculty affairs typically became involved when there were serious concerns about professional conduct. I shook the dean's hand and sat down, maintaining a composed exterior despite my mounting anxiety. "I'll get straight to the point," Eleanor began. "A complaint has been filed regarding a potential conflict of interest in your teaching assignment." "I see," I said carefully, though I had expected as much after last night's confrontation. "May I ask who filed this complaint?" "You know I can't disclose that," Eleanor replied, though her glance toward James spoke volumes. Dean Caldwell cleared her throat. "The specific concern relates to your teaching of a student with whom you may have a complicated personal connection, potentially compromising your ability to evaluate her work objectively." "Sophia Mitchell," I stated plainly. "Yes," the dean confirmed. "It has been brought to our attention that Ms. Mitchell is the daughter of your ex-husband's current partner, creating a situation that some might perceive as problematic." I noticed she said, "ex-husband's current partner," not "the woman he had an affair with," the sanitized language of academia obscuring the messy human reality. "I understand the concern," I said, choosing my words carefully. "However, I've maintained complete professionalism in my interactions. With Sophia, her work is evaluated on its merits alone, as evidenced by her grades and my detailed feedback. Furthermore, until recently, I was unaware of her connection to James and Ms. Mitchell." "Until recently?" Eleanor echoed. "I discovered the connection when I received my class roster before the semester began. By then, Sophia was already enrolled, and I saw no ethical reason to deny her access to the course based on her mother's personal decisions." James shifted uncomfortably in his chair. "Claire, no one is questioning your professionalism, but surely you can see how this creates an awkward situation for everyone." I turned to him, my voice level. "What would you suggest, James? That I tell an exceptionally bright student she can't take a course she's qualified for and interested in because her mother is involved with my ex-husband? How exactly would that conversation go?" Dean Caldwell held up a hand. "Let's stay focused. The university's primary concern is maintaining academic integrity and ensuring all students receive fair treatment." "Which is precisely what I've been doing," I insisted. "Sophia's work is outstanding. Her participation in class is thoughtful and substantive. I've neither favored nor penalized her because of personal connections. To remove her from my class mid-semester would be disruptive to her education and potentially damaging to her academic record." Eleanor studied me for a moment. "Claire, could you step outside briefly while we discuss this matter?" I nodded and left the office, pacing the hallway as minutes ticked by. Through the closed door, I could hear the muffled sounds of what seemed to be a heated discussion. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Eleanor called me back in. "We've reached a decision," Dean Caldwell announced. "Given that we're already halfway through the semester, and lacking any evidence of actual bias in your grading or treatment of Ms. Mitchell, we see no immediate need to reassign her to another section." Relief washed through me, though I maintained my professional demeanor. "However," she continued, "we believe some additional safeguards are appropriate. For the remainder of the semester, Dr. Wright will conduct an independent review of Ms. Mitchell's major assignments before final grades are submitted. This should address any concerns about potential bias, while allowing Ms. Mitchell to continue in the course she's chosen. I have no objection to that arrangement," I said sincerely. "I welcome the additional oversight." "Good," Eleanor nodded. "And Claire, moving forward, it would be advisable to disclose potential conflicts of interest before they become issues. Transparency is always the best policy." "Of course," I agreed, though I wondered how I could have been more transparent about a connection I hadn't initially been aware of myself. As the meeting concluded, James lingered, clearly wanting to speak with me privately. I deliberately gathered my materials slowly, allowing Dean Caldwell and Eleanor to leave first. Once we were alone, James spoke. "Claire, I want you to know I didn't initiate this complaint." "Then who did? Veronica?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. He sighed. "She was upset after last night. She feels that your involvement with Sophia is inappropriate. Because she's afraid I'll tell Sophia the truth about how your relationship began?" I kept my voice low, aware of faculty offices nearby. "It's more complicated than that," James said, running a hand through his hair. "Veronica and Sophia have a complex relationship. Teenage motherhood, years of financial struggle, they've been through a lot together. Veronica is protective, enough to potentially disrupt her daughter's education, to file an ethics complaint that could damage my career." "That doesn't sound protective, James. It sounds vindictive." "She's not vindictive," he insisted. "She's scared." The simple admission stopped me short. Veronica Mitchell? Scared? The woman whose confident smirk had haunted me for months? Scared. Of what exactly? I asked, genuinely curious. James hesitated. Of losing Sophia, of her daughter judging her, of the careful life she's built falling apart. He looked at me directly. Veronica knows she made mistakes. She knows our relationship didn't begin ethically. She's terrified that Sophia will find out and look at her differently. For the first time, I felt a flicker of something like empathy for Veronica. Not enough to excuse her actions, but enough to recognize the human vulnerability beneath her hostile exterior. "I haven't told Sophia anything about our history," I said quietly. "And I don't intend to, despite what Veronica might think. That's not my place." James nodded. "Thank you for that. And for what it's worth, I'm sorry about all of this. You deserve better." I smiled thinly. "I deserved better a year ago, James. Now I'm just trying to do my job." We parted ways in the hallway, and I headed to my classroom, feeling oddly lighter despite the morning's tension. The university hadn't capitulated to the complaint. My professional judgment had been largely affirmed, and I could continue teaching Sophia, albeit with additional oversight. My contemporary women writers class was already seated when I arrived, and I launched into my lecture on Toni Morrison's Beloved with renewed energy. The complex themes of motherhood, trauma, and healing resonated differently for me now, filtered through the lens of the morning's revelations about Veronica and Sophia's relationship. After class, I returned to my office to find Sophia waiting outside my door. "Dr. Donovan," she said, straightening up as I approached. "Do you have a minute?" "Of course," I replied, unlocking my office. "Come in." She took a seat, fidgeting with the strap of her backpack. I wanted to apologize for my mom's behavior last night. She was weird. "There's no need to apologize," I assured her. "Adults have their own complexities." Still, it was rude. She's usually not like that. Sophia hesitated. "Actually, she's been acting strange for weeks now, ever since she started seeing this professor." I kept my expression neutral. "Oh? Yeah. She won't tell me much about him, which is unusual. We've always been close, told each other everything." She frowned. "Last night, after we left, she bombarded me with questions about your class, your teaching style, whether you'd ever mentioned your personal life." My pulse quickened. "What did you tell her?" "The truth, that you're a brilliant professor who challenges us to think more deeply about literature and its cultural contexts, that you rarely discuss your personal life except for occasional references to your academic journey." She shrugged. Then she asked if I wanted to transfer to a different section, which makes absolutely no sense. I told her I'd rather drop out of college entirely than leave your class. I was touched by her loyalty, even as I worried about the position it put her in. "That's very kind, Sophia. But your mother probably has your best interests at heart. Maybe, she conceded, but sometimes parents think they know what's best when they really don't. She straightened in her chair. Anyway, I also wanted to talk to you about my research paper. I've refined my focus on Arundhati Roy's work. We spent the next 20 minutes discussing her academic project, and I was impressed once again by her intellectual sophistication. As our meeting concluded, she paused at the door. Dr. Donovan, can I ask you something personal? I hesitated. You can ask. Are you happy? After whatever it was you went through? In your book acknowledgments, you mentioned reclaiming your voice after years of silence. Did you? Reclaim it, I mean? The question caught me off guard with its perceptiveness and genuine concern. I considered my answer carefully. Yes, I said finally. I am happier now than I was before. Reclaiming my voice meant remembering who I was beyond the roles and relationships that had defined me. It wasn't easy, and there are still difficult days, but overall, yes, I'm happier. She nodded thoughtfully. That's good to hear. Sometimes I worry about my mom. She's spent so much of her life taking care of me, defining herself as my mother, that I'm not sure she knows who she is apart from that anymore. The insight was startlingly mature, revealing a depth of understanding that many adults never achieve. It's a common struggle, I acknowledged. Finding the balance between nurturing Exactly, Sophia agreed. Anyway, thanks for talking with me. See you Thursday. After she left, I sat at my desk, processing our conversation. Sophia was caught in the middle of a situation she didn't fully understand, yet she was perceptive, enough to sense the undercurrents. How long before she pieced together the connections between her mother, James, and me? That evening, I was grading papers at my dining table when my doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I was shocked to see Veronica standing on my porch. For a moment, I considered pretending I wasn't home, but curiosity got the better of me. I opened the door. Ms. Mitchell? I said coolly. This is unexpected. May I come in? Her voice lacked the confrontational edge from our parking lot encounter. She seemed subdued, almost defeated. Against my better judgment, I stepped aside, allowing her into my home. She glanced around at the bookshelves lining my living room walls, the framed academic degrees, the comfortable but stylish furniture. Nice place, she commented. Thank you. What can I do for you? She took a deep breath. First, I want to apologize for filing that complaint with the university. It was reactive. Apology acknowledged, I said, not quite ready to say accepted. I'm not here to fight with you, she continued. I'm here because of Sophia. I gestured toward the sofa. Let's sit down. She perched on the edge of the cushion, tension evident in her posture. Sophia called me after meeting with you today. She was upset, said I was trying to ruin her academic experience, that your class is the best thing that's happened to her at Westfield. She's an exceptional student, I said simply. She also said something else, Veronica continued, her voice softer. She said she worries about me, that she thinks I've lost myself in being her mother. She gave a small, pained laugh. Can you imagine? My daughter worrying that I've sacrificed too much for her, when that's exactly what mothers are supposed to do? The vulnerability in her voice was unexpected, catching me off guard. This wasn't the confident homewrecker who had smirked at me in court. This was a woman grappling with her own insecurities and fears. Sacrifice is part of parenting, I acknowledged, but complete self-erasure isn't healthy for either party. Veronica nodded slowly. You know, when I was 15 and pregnant, everyone told me to give her up. My parents, the school counselors, even the baby's father. They said I was ruining my life, that I'd never amount to anything if I kept her. Her eyes grew distant. But the moment I held her, I knew I'd fight the whole world to keep her safe. And I have, for 18 years. Despite everything, I felt a reluctant admiration for her determination. You've clearly done an excellent job raising her. She's thoughtful, intellectually curious, and empathetic, qualities that reflect well on her upbringing. Thank you for saying that, she said quietly. It hasn't been easy. An uncomfortable silence stretched between us, the weight of our shared connection to James hanging unspoken in the air. Finally, Veronica spoke again. I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest. Do you intend to tell Sophia about James and me? About how our relationship started? I met her gaze directly. No, that's not my story to tell. Relief flashed across her face, quickly followed by suspicion. Why not? It would be the perfect revenge. Because revenge isn't worth damaging an innocent young woman's relationship with her mother, I replied. And because I respect Sophia too much to use her as a pawn in adult grievances. Veronica studied me, as if searching for deception. Finding none, her shoulders relaxed slightly. James said you wouldn't, but I didn't believe him. I couldn't understand why you'd pass up the opportunity to hurt me the way I hurt you. Perhaps because I don't measure my healing by someone else's pain. The words hung between us, not accusatory, but truthful. Veronica looked away, blinking rapidly. I'm going to tell her, she said suddenly. About James, about everything. I was startled. Are you sure that's what you want? It's not what I want, she admitted. It's what I need to do. Sophia deserves the truth, and I'm tired of living in fear that she'll discover it from someone else. She glanced at me. I'd rather she hear it from me on my terms than piece it together from university gossip. That's a courageous decision, I said, meaning it. She gave a humorless laugh. Not courageous, necessary, and long overdue. She stood up, gathering her purse. I should go. Thank you for being more decent than I've been. As I walked her to the door, a thought occurred to me. Veronica, when you do tell Sophia, make sure she knows none of this affects her standing in my class. I'd hate for her to feel awkward or unsure about her place. Veronica nodded. I will. She paused at the threshold. For what it's worth, I'm sorry about how everything happened. With James. Not that we fell in love. I can't apologize for that. But for the way it happened, behind your back. You deserved better. The acknowledgement, simple and sincere, loosened something inside me that I hadn't realized was still tightly wound. Thank you for saying that. After she left, I returned to my dining table, but the papers remained ungraded. My mind was too full of the evening's unexpected conversation. The complexity of human relationships, the ways in which we hurt each other and sometimes, if we're lucky, find paths toward healing. I wondered what would happen when Veronica told Sophia the truth. Would their relationship survive the revelation? Would Sophia continue in my class? And what about James? How would his relationship with Sophia evolve once everything was in the open? These questions had no immediate answers, but for the first time since discovering James's affair, I felt a strange sense of peace. Whatever happened next would unfold without the burden of secrets, without the poison of unspoken truths. I picked up my phone and called my sister. Megan? You'll never believe who just left my house. 2 days passed with no sign of Sophia in my class or office hours. Her absence spoke volumes. Veronica must have told her everything. I found myself checking my email frequently, half expecting a withdrawal request or perhaps an angry message. Neither came. On the third day, just as I was finishing my office hours, a knock sounded at my door. Come in, I called, already gathering my things to leave. Sophia stepped inside, her usual confidence dimmed, her posture uncharacteristically hesitant. Dark circles shadowed her eyes, suggesting sleepless nights. Dr. Donovan, she said, her voice steady despite her obvious distress. Do you have a few minutes? I set my bag down. Of course, Sophia. Please, sit down. She closed the door behind her and took a seat, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. For a long moment, she said nothing, staring at the bookshelves behind me as if gathering her thoughts. My mother told me everything, she finally said. About her and Dr. Morrison, about you, about how it all happened. I nodded, giving her space to continue. I didn't know what to think at first. I still don't, really. She looked directly at me now, her gaze searching. Did you know who I was from the beginning? When I registered for your class? Yes, I admitted. I recognized your last name on the class roster and confirmed the connection after looking at your student profile. She absorbed this. And you didn't think to mention it? I considered whether I should recuse myself from teaching you, I said. Honestly. But that would have required explaining why, which would have meant revealing things about your mother that weren't my place to share. Sophia nodded slowly. My mom said something similar, that you could have used me to get back at her, but you didn't. That was never an option, I assured her. You're a brilliant student, Sophia. Your academic journey shouldn't be disrupted by complicated adult relationships that preceded your time at Westfield. She unclenched her hands, a small sign of relaxing tension. I almost didn't come to class today. I wasn't sure if I could face you knowing everything. I understand, I said gently. If you'd prefer to transfer to another section, I would support that decision, though selfishly, I'd miss your contributions to our discussions. A ghost of a smile touched her lips. Mom offered to arrange that. She said she'd talk to the department. Chair? Make it happen without any academic penalty. She shook her head. But that felt like running away, like I'd be letting other people's mistakes dictate my education. I was impressed by her maturity. That's a thoughtful perspective. Besides, she continued, your class is the best one I'm taking. I'm not giving that up because my mother and Dr. Morrison made choices I don't agree with. The way she hesitated over James's name revealed a new awkwardness there. I wondered how their first meeting had gone after Veronica's revelation. May I ask how you're feeling about everything? I ventured carefully. You don't have to share if you're not comfortable. Sophia looked down at her hands. Honestly, I'm angry, confused, hurt. She took a deep breath. Mom always taught me about integrity, about respecting others. Then I find out she was involved with a married man. It's like everything I thought I knew about her has been called into question. The pain in her voice was palpable, and I felt a surge of protective instinct toward this young woman caught in the crossfire of adult mistakes. Sophia, I said gently, people are complicated. Even the best parents are flawed humans who make mistakes. That doesn't invalidate everything good they've taught you or everything they've sacrificed for you. I know that, intellectually, she acknowledged, but emotionally, it's harder to reconcile. Of course it is, I agreed. And you're entitled to your feelings, all of them. Anger, disappointment, confusion. They're all valid responses to learning. Difficult truths about someone you love. She nodded, blinking back tears. The worst part is, Mom keeps trying to justify it, saying how she and Dr. Morrison had this undeniable connection from the moment they met, how sometimes you can't control who you fall in love with. She looked up at me. But you can control what you do about it, right? You can choose not to act on feelings that would hurt someone else. Her words struck a chord. In her moral clarity, Sophia had articulated what both James and Veronica had danced around in their various explanations and rationalizations. Yes, I said simply, you can choose. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. I'm sorry, I didn't come here to dump all this on you. You're probably the last person who wants to hear about my family drama. Don't apologize, I said. I'm your professor, and part of my job is supporting your academic journey. which sometimes includes navigating personal challenges that impact your studies. Thank you. She took a deep breath, visibly pulling herself together. I should probably go. I have a statistics exam to study for. As she stood to leave, I asked, Sophia, how's your mother doing with all of this? She paused at the door. Not great. She's afraid I'll never forgive her, never look at her the same way again. A complicated emotion crossed her face. The thing is, I'm not sure she's wrong. After she left, I sat in my office pondering the ripple effects of choices made months or even years ago. Veronica's affair with James had set in motion consequences neither of them could have anticipated, affecting not just me but the daughter Veronica had sacrificed so much to raise. That evening, I received an unexpected text message from an unknown. Number Claire, it's Veronica. James gave me your number. Can we meet tomorrow? There's something important we need to discuss regarding Sophia. I hesitated before responding. Lunch, 12:30, Café Margot on Elm Street. Her reply came seconds later. I'll be there. Thank you. Café Margot was busy with the usual lunchtime crowd. When I arrived the next day, a mix of university faculty, local professionals, and students treating themselves to something nicer than campus dining options. I chose a table in the back corner, offering some privacy for what would undoubtedly be a delicate conversation. Veronica arrived precisely at 12:30, dressed more casually than I'd seen her before. Jeans, a simple blouse, minimal makeup. The strain of recent days showed in the tightness around her eyes, the slight slump of her normally perfect posture. Thank you for meeting me, she said, sliding into the chair across from mine. Your message mentioned Sophia, I replied. Is she all right? Veronica signaled to a passing waiter before answering. Physically, yes. Emotionally, she trailed off as the waiter approached. We ordered quickly, a Caesar salad for me, soup for Veronica, and waited until we were alone again. Sophia came to see me after class yesterday, I said. She seemed upset but handling things remarkably well, considering the circumstances. Veronica gave a sad smile. She's always been resilient. Even as a little girl, she could take life's disappointments and setbacks in stride. The smile faded. But this is different. This isn't a skinned knee or a canceled birthday party. This is her mother failing to live up to the values she's preached for 18 years. I wasn't sure how to respond. Part of me, the part still, wounded by Veronica's role in destroying my marriage, felt she deserved her daughter's disapproval. But another part recognized the genuine pain of a mother facing the potential loss of her child's respect and trust. She needs time, I offered finally. This is a lot to process. Time, Veronica repeated. Yes, that's what James says too. Give her time, be patient, answer her questions honestly when she's ready to ask them. She met my eyes. But what if time isn't enough? What if I've permanently damaged our relationship? The raw vulnerability in her questions surprised me. This was not the confident woman who had smirked at me in court, but someone grappling with the consequences of choices she'd never expected to confront so directly. Our food arrived, providing a momentary reprieve from the emotional intensity. We ate in silence for a few minutes before Veronica spoke again. Sophia told me she went to see you, she said. She said you were kind, supportive, that you didn't badmouth me, even though you had every right to. I set down my fork. That wouldn't have helped anyone, least of all Sophia. Still, I appreciate it. She hesitated, especially after how I've treated you. The waiter refilled our water glasses, and I took a sip, considering my response. What exactly did you want to discuss about Sophia? Veronica pushed her half-eaten soup aside. Her academic future. She mentioned that the university is planning to launch a new interdisciplinary program next year, literature and social justice, that aligns perfectly with her interests. Apparently, you're one of the faculty members developing the curriculum. I nodded. That's right. We're still finalizing the details, but it will combine literary analysis with practical applications for advocacy and policy work. Sophia is excited about it, Veronica continued, but she's worried about the awkwardness of continuing to work closely with you, given everything that's happened. I see, I said, though in truth, I felt a pang of disappointment. If she'd prefer to explore other programs. That's not what she wants, Veronica interrupted. And it's not what I want for her either. This program sounds perfect for her academic interests and career goals. Then what are you asking? Veronica took a deep breath. I'm asking if you'd be willing to continue mentoring Sophia, not just as her professor, but potentially as her academic advisor for this program, despite the complications between us. I was taken aback. You're asking me to take a more involved role in Sophia's education? Yes, she said simply. Because you're the best person for it. Because she respects you. And because I've taken enough from you already. I don't want to take this opportunity from my daughter, too. The admission cost her. I could see it in the way she avoided my gaze, in the tight grip she maintained on her water glass. Veronica, I said carefully, are you sure this is what you want? Having me more involved in Sophia's academic life means our paths will cross more frequently. It means navigating uncomfortable situations, possibly for years to come. I know. She finally looked up. But this isn't about me, or you, or even James. It's about Sophia. She deserves the best education possible, and right now, that includes learning from you. I considered her request, weighing professional considerations against personal history. What does James think about this? A flash of irritation crossed her face. Honestly, he thinks it's unnecessary drama. He suggested Sophia consider programs at other universities for graduate school, put some geographical distance between all of us. That's certainly an option, I acknowledged. It's a coward's option, Veronica said bluntly. Running away instead of facing consequences. I've done enough of that in my life. She leaned forward. Claire, I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm not even asking for civility beyond what's necessary for Sophia's benefit. I'm just asking you not to let our history deprive my daughter of academic opportunities she's earned. Put that way, the decision was clear. I will continue to support Sophia's academic journey in whatever capacity serves her best, I said, including as an advisor for the Literature and Social Justice program, if that's what she chooses. But this arrangement can only work if we're all transparent. No more secrets, no more evasions. Relief flooded Veronica's features. Thank you. And yes, complete transparency from now on. As we paid our bills and prepared to leave, Veronica hesitated. There's something else you should know. She took a deep breath. James and I are no longer together. I paused in the middle of gathering my things. Since when? Since the night I told Sophia everything. She shrugged, aiming for nonchalance but not quite achieving it. She asked me a question I couldn't answer. Was he worth it? Worth the lies, the betrayal, the damage to my integrity? And I realized, I don't know. I'm not sure any relationship is worth compromising yourself that deeply. I didn't know what to say. Part of me felt a vindictive satisfaction, immediately followed by guilt for taking pleasure in another's pain, even Veronica's. I'm sorry things ended that way, I said finally, surprising myself with my sincerity. Are you? She smiled sadly. You're a better person than I am, Claire. I wouldn't be sorry if the situation were reversed. We walked out of the cafe together, an odd pair who had loved the same man, hurt each other deeply, and now found ourselves navigating an unexpected connection through a brilliant young woman we both cared about. Does Sophia know about your breakup with James? I asked as we reached the sidewalk. Veronica nodded. She knows. She said it was my decision to make, but I could tell she was relieved. She glanced at her watch. I should go. I have a client. Meeting across town. Of course. She turned to leave, then paused. Claire? Thank you. For being better than either of us deserved. As I watched her walk away, I reflected on the strange turns life could take. A year ago, I would never have imagined standing on a sidewalk having a civil conversation with the woman who had destroyed my marriage. I certainly wouldn't have predicted agreeing to mentor her daughter through college and possibly beyond. Yet, here we were, our lives intertwined in ways none of us could have anticipated. And somehow, I felt lighter than I had in months, as if by agreeing to move forward without the burden of anger and resentment, I had freed myself from chains I hadn't fully recognized. Back in my office, I found an email from Sophia, Dr. Donovan. My mother mentioned she was meeting with you today about the Literature and Social Justice program. I want you to know that if you're uncomfortable with the arrangement she proposed, I completely understand. The last thing I want is to cause you additional stress after everything that's happened. That said, I can't think of anyone I'd rather learn from as I explore the intersection of literature and advocacy. Your perspective, your knowledge, and your ethical approach to academia are exactly what I hope to emulate in my own studies. Whatever you decide, please know that I respect your boundaries, and am grateful for everything you've taught me already. Both. About literature and about handling difficult situations with dignity. Sincerely, Sophia Mitchell. I smiled as I typed my response. Dear Sophia, I would be honored to serve as your advisor for the Literature and Social Justice program. Your academic potential is extraordinary, and I look forward to helping you develop it further. As for the personal complications, I believe we've all demonstrated a commitment to moving forward with transparency and respect. That's all we can ask of each other. See you in class tomorrow. Best regards, Dr. Claire Donovan. After sending the email, I opened the document containing my proposal for the Literature and Social Justice curriculum. With renewed energy, I began refining the course descriptions, imagining Sophia and students like her engaging with the material, perhaps going on to create meaningful change in the world. For the first time in longer than I could remember, I felt not just professionally fulfilled but personally at peace, not despite the complications in my life, but perhaps because of how I'd chosen to navigate them. My phone buzzed with a text from my sister. How's it going with the ex-girlfriend's daughter situation? Still as messy as it sounds? I laughed and typed back, actually, it's evolving into something unexpectedly positive. I'll tell you all about it over dinner this weekend. Looking forward to it, she replied. Proud of you, sis. Setting my phone aside, I returned to my work, grateful for the strange path that had led me here, to reclaiming not just my academic voice, but my sense of self beyond the roles and relationships that had once defined me. The future remained uncertain, but for now, this moment of clarity and purpose was enough. Spring bloomed across campus, bringing with it the particular energy of a semester winding down. Students lounged on the quad between final exams, professors rushed to complete grading, and the administration busied itself preparing for commencement ceremonies. For me, the season brought an additional focus, finalizing the curriculum for the Literature and Social Justice program scheduled to launch in the fall. Dr. Donovan, do you have a minute? I looked up from my laptop to find Sophia hovering in my office doorway, a folder tucked under her arm, her expression uncharacteristically nervous. Of course, I said, gesturing to the chair across from my desk. How are your finals going? Good, I think. She settled into the chair, placing the folder carefully on her lap. I just finished my political theory exam. Only 2 more to go. And my class? I asked with a smile. Ready for Thursday's final? As ready as I'll ever be, she said, returning the smile. But that's not why I'm here. I waited, giving her space to continue at her own pace. I've been doing some independent research, she began, finally opening the folder, about women's experiences in post-conflict societies, specifically focusing on their literary expressions following civil wars in Rwanda and Sierra Leone. That sounds fascinating, I said, genuinely impressed. It started as a personal interest. Project. Something beyond our class requirements. She hesitated. But it's grown into something more substantial. I was hoping you might review it. Maybe offer guidance on whether it could be developed into a proper academic article. She handed me several neatly printed pages. A quick glance revealed sophisticated analysis, comprehensive citations, and an original theoretical framework unusual for an undergraduate, even one as gifted as Sophia. I'd be happy to review this, I said. Have you considered submitting it to the undergraduate research symposium in the fall? Her eyes brightened. I hadn't, actually. Do you think it's good enough? Based on a first impression, absolutely. I set the paper aside. But Sophia, there's something I sense you're not telling me. This visit seems to be about more than your research paper. She looked down, fingers fidgeting with the edge of the folder. You're right. I wanted to talk to you about something else, but I wasn't sure how to bring it up. Just say it, I encouraged gently. It's about my mom, she said finally. And Dr. Morrison, and you. My stomach tightened, but I kept my expression neutral. What about us? I feel caught in the middle, she admitted. Mom tries to act normal, but I can tell she's still hurting over their breakup. Dr. Morrison keeps reaching out, wanting to explain his side of things, whatever that means. And I'm worried about how all this will affect my academic future, especially the new program with you. I considered her concerns carefully before responding. That's a lot to navigate, especially while finishing your first year of college. What specifically worries you about the program? I'm afraid it'll be awkward, she said bluntly, that my participation will be overshadowed by all this personal history, that other students or faculty might think I got special treatment because of the connections. Her concerns were valid. Academic environments thrived on gossip, and the complicated relationship between a professor, her ex-husband, his former girlfriend, and her daughter would provide irresistible fodder for department speculation. Those are legitimate concerns, I acknowledged. I wish I could promise that none of that will happen. But university communities can be both intellectual and deeply petty. What I can promise is that any opportunity you receive in this program will be based solely on your academic merit. She nodded, looking slightly relieved. Thank you for being honest. There's something else, too. I was hoping you might help me understand how you did it. Did what? Moved forward? Rebuilt your career? Found your voice again? She looked at me, directly now. My mom told me how she and Dr. Morrison met, how their relationship overlapped with your marriage. It must have been devastating. Yet here you are, successful, respected, creating new academic programs. How did you not let it destroy you? The question caught me off guard with its directness and vulnerability. Sophia was asking not just as a student seeking advice, but as a young woman trying to understand how people recover from profound betrayal and disappointment. It wasn't easy, I said honestly. There were dark days when getting out of bed felt impossible, when every professional rejection seemed to confirm that I'd been right to put my career second to James's, that I had nothing valuable to contribute on my own. She listened intently as I continued. The turning point came when I realized I was allowing their choices to define not just my past, but my future. That by dwelling in anger and resentment, I was giving them power over me long after the divorce was finalized. So you just decided not to be angry anymore? She asked skeptically. I laughed softly. No, it wasn't that simple. I still felt anger, still do sometimes. But I made a conscious choice not to let that anger drive my decisions. I focused on what I could control, my research, my teaching, rebuilding my professional identity. That's what Mom's trying to do now, Sophia said thoughtfully. Refocus on her design work. Separate her identity from her relationship with Dr. Morrison. She hesitated. I haven't made it easy for her. I've been pretty judgmental. That's understandable, I assured her. You're processing your own feelings of disappointment and disillusionment. But I don't want to punish her forever. She admitted. She made mistakes, serious ones. But she's still the woman who sacrificed everything to raise me, who taught me to value education and independence. She looked down at her hands. I just don't know how to bridge the gap between the mother I thought I knew and the person who made these choices I find so hard to respect. The maturity in her self-reflection touched me. Perhaps understanding doesn't require complete reconciliation of those two views, I suggested. People are complex, contradictory creatures. We can hold opposing truths about those we love, acknowledging their flaws while valuing their virtues. Sophia considered this. That makes sense. I can be disappointed in her choices without dismissing everything good about her. She smiled ruefully. It's easier in theory than in practice, though. Most important things are, I agreed. She gathered her folder, preparing to leave. Thank you, Dr. Donovan, for reviewing my paper and for everything else. You're welcome, Sophia. I'll have feedback on your research by next week. After she left, I sat reflecting on our conversation, struck by how naturally I'd fallen into a mentoring role that transcended typical professor-student boundaries. There was something deeply satisfying about helping this bright young woman navigate complicated emotional terrain while nurturing her intellectual growth. My phone chimed with a text message from Eleanor Wright. Committee meeting moved to 4 p.m. Morrison requested schedule change. Conflict with your availability? I texted back, 4 p.m. works for me. The Literature and Social Justice Program Committee included faculty from various departments, including, somewhat awkwardly, James from history. After his breakup with Veronica, our professional interactions had been minimal, limited to necessary departmental functions and brief hallway nods. When I arrived at the meeting room that afternoon, most committee members were already seated around the conference table. James sat at the far end, deep in conversation with a colleague from political science. He glanced up as I entered, offering a hesitant smile that I acknowledged with a polite nod before taking my seat. Eleanor called the meeting to order, guiding us through agenda items efficiently. The program structure had been approved by the administration. Now we were finalizing course offerings and discussing potential community partnerships for the service learning component. Dr. Donovan, Eleanor said, could you update us on the core literature courses you've developed for the program? I opened my laptop, sharing my screen on the room's display. I've designed 3 foundational courses examining how literature functions as both witness and catalyst in social justice movements. I walked the committee through course descriptions, learning objectives, and assigned texts, fielding questions about assessment methods and potential cross-listing with existing courses. These look excellent, Dr. Hernandez from Global Studies commented, particularly the emphasis on non-Western perspectives. Thank you, I replied. I'm hoping to create space for voices and experiences often marginalized in traditional literary studies. I have a question, James said, speaking for the first time since my presentation began. The 3rd course mentions collaborative projects with community organizations. Have you identified specific partners yet? I have preliminary commitments from 3 organizations, I answered, keeping my tone professionally neutral. A refugee resettlement agency, a prison literacy program, and a youth writing workshop in the city's underserved neighborhoods. He nodded. The history department has established relationships with several archives documenting social movements in the region. There might be opportunities for collaboration there as well. That would be valuable, I acknowledged, somewhat surprised by his constructive engagement. Students could benefit from examining both literary representations and historical documentation. of the same movements. The meeting continued with other faculty presenting their components of the program. As we wrapped up, setting dates for our next gathering, James approached me while I gathered my materials. "Claire," he said quietly, "do you have a moment?" I glanced at my watch. "A brief one. I have another appointment soon." We moved to a quieter corner of the room as other faculty filtered out. "I wanted to thank you," he began, his discomfort evident, in the way he shifted his weight from one foot to the other, "for how you've handled everything with Sophia. Veronica told me about your agreement to serve as her advisor despite our complicated history. I made that decision based on Sophia's academic needs," I said simply. "She's an exceptional student who deserves strong mentorship." "Yes, she is," he agreed. "I've been impressed with her work in my colonial history seminar this semester." I raised an eyebrow. "Sophia is taking your class?" He looked surprised. "She didn't mention it? She enrolled about a month ago, after the ad drop deadline. I had to get special permission from the registrar." "No, she didn't mention it." This was an interesting development, Sophia simultaneously maintaining academic relationships with both me and James, navigating the complicated dynamics between us. "She's very careful to call me Dr. Morrison in class," he said with a sad smile. "Very formal, very proper. No hint that there's any connection beyond student and professor." "That sounds like Sophia," I noted. "She's adept at maintaining appropriate boundaries. A skill she perhaps developed watching her mother navigate single parenthood," I thought, but didn't say. James hesitated, clearly wrestling with something. "There's something else I wanted to discuss. I've been offered a visiting professorship at Princeton for next year. I'm considering accepting it. This news caught me off guard." "That's a prestigious opportunity," I said carefully, unsure why. He was sharing this with me. "It would mean taking a leave of absence from Westfield," he continued, "creating some distance from the current situation." There it was. Running away rather than facing the consequences of his choices, exactly as Veronica had described. "That's certainly one approach," I said neutrally. "You don't approve," he observed. "It's not my place to approve or disapprove of your career decisions, James." "But you have an opinion," he pressed. I sighed. "Fine. Yes, I think distance might simplify things in the short term. But eventually, you'll have to return and face whatever you're trying to escape. Universities are small worlds with long memories." He contemplated this. "You stayed. After everything, you chose to remain here, to build something new in the same place where you experienced profound hurt." "I did," I acknowledged, "because leaving would have meant allowing other people's actions to dictate my choices once again. I was tired of rearranging my life around others' decisions." A complicated emotion crossed his face, something between admiration and regret. "You've changed, Claire. You're stronger now, more decisive." "I've reclaimed myself," I corrected him. "This isn't new strength. It's who I always was before I subordinated my needs and ambitions to yours." He winced at the bluntness of my assessment. "I deserve that. I took advantage of your support for years, then betrayed your trust in the worst possible way." He met my eyes directly. "I'm truly sorry, Claire. Not just for the affair, but for all the years I accepted your sacrifices without proper appreciation or reciprocity." The apology, more comprehensive than any he'd offered previously, stirred complicated feelings. There was a time when these words would have meant everything to me. Now they were simply an acknowledgement of a truth I'd already accepted and moved beyond. "Thank you for saying that," I said quietly. "I hope you find what you're looking for at Princeton." As I turned to leave, he asked, "Do you think Sophia will ever forgive Veronica? Or me?" I paused. "That's not for me to predict, but Sophia is remarkably thoughtful and empathetic. She's wrestling with reconciling her image of her mother with the choices Veronica made. It's a process that takes time. And forgiveness? He pressed. Forgiveness isn't an event, James. It's a journey, one that each person navigates in their own way and time. I offered a small smile. For what it's worth, I think Sophia is already on that path, even if she doesn't recognize it yet. His relief was palpable. Thank you, Claire, for everything. I left the meeting room and walked across campus, reflecting on the strange evolution of relationships once defined by hurt and betrayal. The conversation with James felt like closing a chapter, not through dramatic confrontation or tearful reconciliation, but through quiet acknowledgement of growth and change. My phone buzzed with an email notification from Sophia. Dr. Donovan, I've been thinking more about what we discussed regarding my research. If you believe the undergraduate research symposium would be a good venue, I'd like to develop my paper further this summer. Also, I wanted to let you know that I'm hosting a small dinner at my apartment this Friday. Just my mom, myself, and a few close friends from my study group. We're celebrating surviving freshman year and my mom's new design contract. I would be honored if you could join us. No pressure at all if it feels uncomfortable. Best regards, Sophia. I smiled at the invitation. Another unexpected development in this unfolding story. After a moment's consideration, I typed my response. Dear Sophia, I would be delighted to attend your dinner on Friday. Please let me know what I can bring to contribute to the celebration. Regarding your research, I fully support your continued development of the project. I'd be happy to provide guidance over the summer as you prepare for the symposium. Looking forward to Friday, Dr. Donovan as. I sent the email. I marveled at life's capacity for surprise and renewal. A year ago, the thought of sharing a celebratory dinner with Veronica Mitchell would have seemed impossible, perhaps even nightmarish. Now it felt like a natural progression in our evolving connection through Sophia. Standing at the edge of campus, watching students traverse the paths between buildings, I was struck by a sense of contentment I hadn't experienced in years. The pain of betrayal had not disappeared entirely. Such wounds never fully heal, but it had transformed into something manageable, even instructive. From the ashes of my marriage had risen not just a renewed academic career, but a deeper understanding of my own resilience and capacity for growth. Whatever Friday's dinner might bring, I would face it with the confidence of someone who had navigated loss and emerged stronger, more authentic, and perhaps most surprisingly, more open to the unpredictable connections that shape our lives. Friday evening arrived with gentle spring warmth, the kind that hints at summer's approach. I stood outside Sophia's apartment building, a bottle of wine in one hand and a small bouquet of tulips in the other. For the third time, I considered turning around, making some excuse about sudden illness or forgotten commitments. Instead, I took a deep breath and pressed the intercom button for apartment 3B. Dr. Donovan? Sophia's voice crackled through the speaker. Come on up! The apartment was on the third floor of a renovated Victorian house popular with upperclassmen seeking more independence than dorms could offer. When Sophia opened the door, the aroma of garlic and herbs enveloped me, along with the soft buzz of conversation and music playing in the background. I'm so glad you came, she said, genuine warmth in her smile as she accepted the wine and flowers. These are beautiful. Thank you. The apartment was small but charming, with exposed brick walls and large windows overlooking a tree-lined street. 3 young women, presumably Sophia's study group friends, gathered around a coffee table laden with appetizers. And there, arranging something in the kitchen, was Veronica. She looked up as I entered, our eyes meeting across the room. For a fleeting second, I saw a trace of the discomfort I felt reflected in her expression before she composed herself and offered a smile. Claire, she said, wiping her hands on a kitchen towel before approaching. Thank you for coming. Thank you for having me, I replied, matching her civil tone. This was Sophia's celebration, after all, and neither of us wanted to spoil it with lingering tension. Sophia quickly introduced me to her friends, Amara, Lynn, and Jasmine, all fellow freshmen with impressive academic credentials. They regarded me with a mixture of curiosity and deference, clearly briefed on my position at the university, but perhaps not on the complicated connections tying the evening's guests together. Dr. Donovan is one of the architects of the new literature and social justice program, Sophia explained as we settled in the living area. She's also agreed to be my advisor if I'm accepted. If? Lynn raised an eyebrow. With your GPA and recommendations? It's definitely when, not if. Sophia blushed slightly at the praise. Nothing's certain in academia. Right, Dr. Donovan? True enough, I agreed. Though I'd be very surprised if your application wasn't successful, Sophia. Veronica emerged from the kitchen with a platter of bruschetta. Dinner's almost ready. Another 10 minutes for the risotto. Mom insists on cooking for any gathering larger than 2 people, Sophia explained with affectionate exasperation. It's how she shows love. Food brings people together, Veronica said, setting down the platter. It creates a shared experience, across differences. The simple observation carried unexpected weight in a room where differences certainly existed. Differences in age, experience, and most significantly, in our tangled personal histories. As the evening progressed, I found myself relaxing more than I'd anticipated. The students were bright and engaging, the food was excellent, and the conversation flowed naturally through topics ranging from campus politics to summer plans. Veronica and I maintained a polite distance, interacting primarily through the buffer of Sophia and her friends. After dinner, as the students migrated to the living room with dessert plates, Veronica and I found ourselves alone in the kitchen, loading the dishwasher. The awkward moment I'd been bracing for all evening had finally arrived. Sophia seems happy, I said, breaking the silence. This was a lovely idea. Veronica nodded, rinsing a serving dish. She needed this, a celebration, a moment of normalcy. After everything that's happened, she hesitated. Thank you for coming. I know it couldn't have been easy. Easier than I expected, actually, I admitted. She glanced at me, surprise evident in her expression. Really? Seeing you in this context, as Sophia's mother, hosting a dinner for her friends, it's different, I explained. It's harder to maintain old grievances when faced with new dimensions of someone. A small smile touched her lips. I've been thinking something similar about you. It's difficult to sustain anger toward someone who's had such a positive influence on my daughter. We continued working side by side, the domestic task creating an unexpected bridge between us. James told me he's considering Princeton, Veronica said eventually. He mentioned it, I confirmed. Have you spoken with him recently? She shook her head. Not directly. He left a message for Sophia, and she told me. She frowned slightly. Running away seems to be his default response to complications. The observation, so similar to my own assessment, surprised a laugh from me. I had the same thought. Our eyes met, and for the first time, a genuine smile passed between us. The shared understanding of 2 women who had loved and been hurt by the same man. Sophia's taking his colonial history course, I mentioned. I know. Veronica sighed. She says it's purely academic interest, but I think she's trying to understand him, to make sense of his role in all this. She's remarkably mature, I observed. Thoughtful about complex ethical situations in ways many adults never master. Pride illuminated Veronica's face. She always has been. Even as a child, she could see nuances that others missed. Her expression sobered, which made my deception all the worse. She deserved better from me. Before I could respond, Sophia appeared in the kitchen doorway. Everything okay in here? You 2 have been suspiciously quiet. Just comparing notes on your academic brilliance, I replied lightly. And loading the dishwasher, Veronica added. Perfectly civil activities. Sophia looked between us, clearly, searching for signs of tension. Finding none, she relaxed visibly. Well, we're about to play a ridiculous board game that involves explaining academic concepts using only song lyrics. Fair warning, it gets competitive. Sounds dangerous, I said with a smile. Lead the way. The remainder of the evening passed in unexpected camaraderie. I found myself laughing more than I had in months, particularly when Veronica attempted to convey categorical imperative through Taylor Swift lyrics, resulting in baffled guesses from the students. As the night wound down and guests began to leave, Sophia walked me to the door, Veronica remaining tactfully in the kitchen to give us a moment alone. Thank you again for coming, Sophia said. It meant a lot to me. I enjoyed myself, I replied honestly. You have wonderful friends. She nodded, then hesitated. And thank you for being kind to my mom. I know it's complicated between you, too. Life is complicated, Sophia. Sometimes the only way forward is through unexpected grace. Her eyes widened slightly at this. That's similar to something my mom said recently, about how healing doesn't always look like what we expect. I smiled. Perhaps we're all learning as we go. She hugged me then, a brief but heartfelt gesture that caught me by surprise. Good night, Dr. Donovan. Good night, Sophia. Congratulations again on completing your first year. As I walked to my car, I felt a sense of closure I hadn't anticipated. The evening had transformed abstract ideas of forgiveness and moving forward into something tangible. Shared laughter, meaningful conversation, the simple act of loading a dishwasher together. Summer arrived, bringing with it the particular quiet that descends on university campuses between semesters. My days filled with research, writing, and finalizing details for the literature and social justice program. I met with Sophia several times to guide her research project, our academic relationship deepening into something approaching friendship, though always with appropriate professional boundaries. James departed for Princeton in early June, sending a brief email before he left. Claire, as you predicted, distance feels like both a relief and an evasion. Perhaps what I'm really seeking is perspective on my choices, my relationships, my future. Princeton offers that opportunity, though. I recognize it also represents a certain retreat from consequences. I want you to know how deeply I admire the grace with which you've navigated this past year. Your resilience and integrity have been a powerful reminder of qualities I once took for granted and now recognize as extraordinary. Be well, James. I read the message several times, appreciating its honesty while noting the careful absence of any mention of returning to Westfield. Some bridges once crossed cannot be traversed again. One warm July afternoon, I received an unexpected text from Veronica. Sophia mentioned you're presenting at the Palmer Conference next week. She's interning at a design firm nearby and suggested we meet for dinner after your panel if you're free. No pressure. The invitation gave me pause. Our dinner at Sophia's apartment had been civil, even pleasant at moments, but deliberate socializing, without Sophia present, represented a different level of reconciliation. After consideration, I replied, that would be fine. The panel ends at 5:30. Suggest a place? Her response came quickly. There's a small Italian restaurant called Vesuvio, a few blocks from the conference center. 7-9? We met as planned the following week. Conversation initially revolving around neutral topics. My presentation, Sophia's internship, the literature and social justice program. As our entrees arrived, however, Veronica shifted to more personal territory. I've been seeing a therapist, she said, twirling pasta around her fork. Trying to understand patterns in my relationships, particularly with unavailable men. That sounds valuable, I replied, unsure where she was heading with this. Disclosure, it's been illuminating, she continued. James wasn't the first married man I got involved with, just the most significant. She met my gaze directly. I'm not telling you this to excuse what happened, but to explain that I'm working to ensure it never happens again. I nodded, appreciating her candor. Self-awareness is powerful. So is forgiveness, she said quietly. Both of others and oneself. We fell silent for a moment, the weight of our shared history hovering between us. Do you ever wonder, she asked eventually, what might have happened if we'd met under different circumstances? If there had been no James connecting us? The question was unexpected, prompting me to consider our fundamentally different lives, values, and choices. Yet there was also Sophia, this brilliant, thoughtful young woman who connected us now in ways neither of us could have anticipated. I think we might have respected each other, I said finally. Perhaps not as friends, but as women navigating different paths with certain shared values. She smiled. Like our belief in education as a transformative force, our appreciation for complexity in literature and life. Exactly, I agreed, surprised by her perception. And our love for Sophia, she added softly, though in very different ways. The acknowledgement of this unusual connection, her as mother, me as mentor, felt significant, a recognition of the strange bond that had formed through circumstances neither of us would have chosen. After dinner, as we walked to our respective cars, Veronica paused. Claire? Thank you. For dinner? It was my turn to— No, she interrupted gently. For seeing my daughter as herself, not as an extension of me or of our complicated history, for giving her the mentorship she deserves despite everything. The sincerity in her voice moved me unexpectedly. She makes it easy, I replied honestly. Sophia is her own person, remarkable in ways that have nothing to do with either of us. And yet, shaped by both of us now, Veronica observed. By your academic guidance, as much as by my parenting. We had reached my car. I turned to face her, struck by how far we had come from that moment in the courtroom when her smirk had seemed to define our relationship forever. Life takes unexpected turns, I said. A year ago, I could never have imagined standing here, having a civil conversation with you. More than civil, she noted with a small smile. Almost friendly. Almost, I agreed, returning the smile. We parted with a simple goodbye. No dramatic declarations of forgiveness or friendship, just the quiet acknowledgement of a journey neither of us had anticipated. The fall semester began with renewed energy and purpose. The Literature and Social Justice program launched successfully, with Sophia among its first cohort of students. I watched with pride as she flourished, her research project evolving into a presentation that earned accolades at the undergraduate symposium. One crisp October afternoon, exactly 1 year after I'd discovered Sophia's name on my class roster, I stood at the podium in Westfield's largest lecture hall, introducing a distinguished panel of authors discussing literature as a tool for social change. Looking out at the packed audience, I spotted Sophia in the third row, taking notes with her characteristic intensity. Beside her sat Veronica, listening attentively. As the panel concluded and attendees filed out, I caught Sophia's eye across the room. She smiled and waved, then turned to say something to her mother. Veronica glanced in my direction, offering a nod of acknowledgement. Not the smirk that had once haunted me, but a gesture of mutual respect between two women who had traveled a complicated path from animosity to something approaching understanding. In that moment, I reflected on the strange symmetry of our situation. A year ago, Veronica had smirked at me across a courtroom, confident in her victory in claiming James. Now, James was gone from both our lives, while we remained connected through Sophia, not as rivals, but as women who had each, in our own way, reclaimed our voices and our paths. Life rarely follows the narrative we expect. Sometimes the person who causes our deepest pain becomes the catalyst for unexpected growth. Sometimes the relationship we most dread becomes a source of unforeseen connection. And sometimes the closure we seek comes not through confrontation or revenge, but through the quiet dignity of moving forward with grace and purpose. As I gathered my materials from the podium, I felt profoundly grateful, not for the betrayal and pain that had initiated this journey, but for the strength I had discovered within myself, the renewed passion for my work, and the unexpected connections that had emerged from ashes I once thought would only ever represent loss. The smirk that had symbolized my humiliation had faded into insignificance, replaced by something far more powerful. The knowledge that the best revenge is not destroying someone else's happiness, but creating your own, on your own terms, defined by your own voice, illuminated by your own light.